that's where you lived there because you had a lot of, each house had a lot of land, so there were horses. And it was more country, so where we lived on Hovey Street, there was a lot of, just like regular houses and blocks. So my sister Grace, now I have 5 sisters, but my sister Grace, her boyfriend lived near Cudahy. Okay, so Cudahy was more country looking. It was, like I said, at nighttime you hardly seen any street lights. It was really dark. All right, so one night, and I think they were freshmen. They were freshmen. My sister Grace's boyfriend Robert, his friend was older. He was an older teenager, and he had went to his friend's house, and they were drinking. You know, the biggest thing they did back then was drink beer. So he had too much stuff to drink. So he said, "Oh, I'm going to call a taxi cab because this way I won't get in trouble." And so he left his car there at his friend's. He called a taxi. And taxi back in the day was real cheap. Anybody could afford a taxi. So he called a taxi cab. But before while he was waiting for the taxi cab driver, he was going down the dark, lonely road, and then he noticed like a white form in the distance. So, you know, him had a couple of beers, you know, he's like, oh, I'm seeing things. So then he stopped. He was listening. And he could hear like a, you know, when it's windy outside like it is today, it's like windy. And it was starting to get dark outside. It wasn't completely dark. So then he looked and he seen the most beautiful, beautiful lady with a girl. She was a young girl actually, like maybe late teens or 20s, coming towards him. Like she was almost like floating. And then he noticed this most strange thing. She had a wedding gown on, a white, the purest white wedding gown. And he said that the gown had little sequins on it. So he said he sobered up so fast that he had been, you know, a little intoxicated, and that he got sober because he seen this beautiful girl coming towards him. And he thought, well, maybe she got separated from her husband or she's on her way to her wedding. So she came, she didn't speak to him. He tried to talk to her. Then here comes the taxi cab driver. When the taxi cab driver came, he was going to go in, but the white lady, that's what she was known as, she got in the taxi cab. So then he thought, well, I called for the taxi, I'm paying for it, so I'll get in too. He got in beside her, and the guy, the taxi cab driver looked, and he was looking in his mirror, and he seen the white lady, and he was trying to make conversation, and then he seen the young teenager. So he's like, oh, it's a nice night, and it's beautiful, and because it was fall. Back home in the fall, September, the weather's like in the 60s.
Oh, yes.
It's real cool and breezy, yes, like in Chicago. So then, they hadn't even got a block. And he looked, the white lady had disappeared. She disappeared. But before she disappeared, she had laid her hands on him. And her hand on Robert's friend's hand, and he said that her hand was ice cold. And when he turned, she had just suddenly disappeared. So that is a true story, and this is the legend. The White Lady of Cudahy has taken many forms, but back then what had happened, on the night she got married, she had a fight, I don't know, with her father or her husband-to-be, and she ran out away from the big castle auditorium where they're going to have her wedding. And she got hit, she got run over by a car. But they said that her soul didn't rest because she never got to, back in the day you didn't have sex before marriage. So, you know, she wanted to finish her wedding vows and, you know, become a wife. So that they say that she wanders because she's looking for her husband or her soulmate. So that's a true story. At first I told my sister, Graciela, I don't believe that. And then that she was sighted and seen by other people in our community, and I was like, God, I hope she never appears to me. But she never appeared to me, but she had. That is a true story. And they say there have sightings of her not only in Indiana, but in Chicago, in Mexico. They have seen her. So have you ever heard this legend of the White Lady?
No.
Last time
Oh, La Llorona was something
last
different.
time we saw, I was with my friend, we were at her house, and we were bored, so we just put on like scary videos. And there was this one, I think it was in Europe, that they're down like on a road, and then they pick up a girl, and then the girl like she's all pretty, and she's like talking to them, and like she's like normal, and then they look at her, she like turns ugly, huh? She like turns blue, and they crash. And every time you pass through there, she asks for a ride, and she gets on, and you guys die. Only one person.
Oh, I won't be giving no pretty girls any rides. No.
That
No.
video about the
Oh.
guys that kept saying like they're at the chain station, that one
That
freaked
was
me out.
crazy.
No, what? Say what?
Miss.
Go ahead.
The one at a train station.
Go ahead, Priscilla.
There's this.
Oh my God.
Magdalena de Quino. It's this beach close to Hermosillo. Narrow way. And when you're coming back at night, there's this. It's a girl, and she's in a white gown too. And she stands in the middle of the street because it's just one street like that. And she gets in the back of the trucks. And before you get there, she asks for a ride to get to Hermosillo. And before you get there, she just disappears.
Oh, she's kind of like the White Lady. That could be the White Lady. Yeah, but this one's dressed in a wedding gown. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Miss, can I show you a video?
Sure.